Capital here from Lugano, Switzerland. We are with the CEO of Lightspark, David Marcus. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
To start off, can you tell us a little bit about Lightspark, what you guys do, and who you're working with?
So Lightspark is a global money movement company built on top of Bitcoin. And what we do is build a set of technologies and products to enable banks, wallets, and financial institutions to use Bitcoin to move real money and all kinds of different currencies and stable coins on top of the Bitcoin network in real time in over 65 countries.
That's great. And who are some of the people that you're working with that we might know?
So mainstream banks like SoFi in the US, Bank in Latin America, Revolut in Europe, Coinbase as an exchange. And we provide connectivity onto the Lightning Network. And beyond that, we launched a new Bitcoin L2 called Spark 6 months ago. That's now enabling for the issuance of stablecoins and self-custody wallets for stablecoins and Bitcoin that extend the network. Last week, we also announced a new product called Grid that enables anyone to build a money movement app that can move fiat currencies between 65 real-time payment systems. So 65 countries, 65 different payment networks and bank systems, and also move money to self-custody wallets on Spark with both Bitcoin and stablecoins.
So kind of my thought on the Bitcoin investment thesis and the perspective from institutional investors was that they were completely focused on the idea of Bitcoin as digital gold and had really overlooked the peer-to-peer electronic cash part. Do you feel that? I mean, it sounds like you're getting traction with some of these big institutional players, specifically on the payment side. So is maybe that not accurate?
I think it's a sequencing thing.
Yeah.
Bitcoin can never become a network for mainstream payments unless it had the value it has now, unless you had ETFs built on it, unless you had large financial services firms wanting to hold it and invest in it. And so I think you needed that first step. And now we're entering the utility phase of Bitcoin where you can finally build mainstream payments use cases on top of real time Bitcoin supported by Lightning and Spark.
Okay, that's interesting. So I mean, this still feels like very early days though, because you don't see any of that kind of mentioned in any of the research or the coverage. So do you think that just plays out slowly over time, or
I think it's slowly and then all of a sudden,
yeah,
typically in those things. And for us, having a major publicly listed U.S. bank
yeah,
using Bitcoin as a network to move money for millions of consumers in the U.S. Between borders, offer real-time 24/7 payments, like leaving a U.S. Checking account denominated in dollars, arriving a second later in Mexico in Mexican peso, using invisible Bitcoin that no one actually understands they're using, is a pretty magical thing for the Bitcoin community. And this just happened last week. They launched last week, and it's going really really well. And of course, Nubank was an early adopter in Brazil, and they're launching in many other countries with the network as well. But I think you needed that moment, and then you can see that Bitcoin, first of all, is not a network controlled by anyone. It's not a corp
yeah,
chain. And so, banks and financial institutions have already given a lot of power to closed networks, and it has come back to bite them.
sure.
So they like open networks, and they like not king making a company that is going to be moving all of their money. And if you can do it in the most efficient, real time, low cost way, then all of a sudden everyone's going to be using it. And I expect to see massive growth in the next 5 years.
That's amazing. Can you? I read a little bit that you guys have a rewards program as well for Grid and for I think for Lightspark as well. How does that work? Can you talk about that?
It's not a rewards program, but it's a platform that enables anyone to build a very successful Bitcoin rewards program or loyalty program, and this is actually interesting because it couldn't be done before. So if you imagine spinning up hundreds of millions of wallets
Yeah,
and dropping in 5 cents, 10 cents a pop every time you tap a card for it to make a purchase, every time you buy a coffee at a coffee shop, every time you complete a mission on a
sure.
game, you can't do that. You couldn't do that before Spark on Lightning. You couldn't do it. You had to actually put liquidity in front of every wallet, and that would have been totally prohibitive from an economical standpoint. And because we have the rails connected to 65 countries, real-time payment rails, you can actually come in with fiat as a company wanting to pay rewards, and start beaming Bitcoin, like small amounts of Bitcoin in real time, to hundreds of millions of wallets at a very low cost for the very first time since Bitcoin was invented. And we think that's a great way to drive massive Bitcoin adoption for people who just want to stack sats.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And what about, so it seems like that kind of ties over with the applications for social media that we haven't, I don't think people have been talked about recently. I've been talking about recently, but and given your background working with Meta, this is something that I think people were super excited about maybe 2016 or 2017, the idea that you could clean up the whole social media model so it's not so dependent on advertising. And when somebody likes your content, they could just stream you.
Tip you, or
That's right,
yeah,
exactly right. How
yeah.
come that didn't develop? That seemed like a no-brainer application for the Lightning Network.
So actually, interestingly enough, since we launched Spark, we've seen an insane developer and builder energy on top of the network. And one of the wallets has actually done exactly that on X. And so now it's called the BitBit. Now use that wallet, and you can actually tip people a few sats on a tweet at one click
Yeah.
for the first time, and it has taken off really rapidly in the first few weeks since they launched. Uh, that being said, I do think that building an entire social network without ads, just on tipping, is not going
So,
to happen anytime
so
soon.
that's the reason why the social media companies don't like it, is because the advertisement part is just so much more profitable. Is that right?
No, but no, it's also people. Like people are like people like other people, but not
Yeah.
enough to
Give them
actually
money.
give them money to the rates that actually creates like a network that actually works. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think people hate on ads, but
Yeah.
a good targeted ad, makes you discover new products, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm personally not in that camp. I think it allows for everyone to have a free service.
Yeah.
It allows for small businesses to grow their businesses, and people like, if ads are not intrusive and they're good targeted ads, I think it's fine. So I'm not sure
Okay.
we'll see any social network at scale of billions of people develop on the basis of tipping. That said, I'm glad that people are building on Spark solutions to enable people to send
Yeah,
their
but
appreciation in sats.
you do have platforms like Patreon, right? And you have people on YouTube who are like, "Hey, if you like my
Yeah,
content, send me money and go to Patreon." And then
yeah,
people do, right? So why can't we cut out Patreon and then go straight to,
yeah.
Bitcoin on
I mean,
Spark?
I think that these platforms are actually a different kind of social network where
Yeah.
you have real creative people who are producing quality content that people are willing to pay for. The reality is, when you look at the bar for what people are ready to pay for, it's really high.
Okay.
And people don't want to spend their money just randomly, and so it's a human
That's
nature
true.
thing,
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always get that when somebody sends me an article and it's
Uh-huh.
behind a paywall, and I'm just not going to read it. I don't
Like,
care.
there you go.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay,
By the
prove
way,
my
that
point.
that's one of the things that I think might work really well.
Yeah.
Is, let's say you have a Spark wallet as an extension, and we have now many extensions, like Xverse has built on Spark
Yeah.
an extension, etc. So you have your Bitcoin wallet as a Chrome extension, or as a
Hmm.
as a browser extension, and you have a paywall. And the more you scroll, the more you stream Sats to the publisher to unlock the next section of the article.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a frictionless way for people to access content behind a paywall, if they're so willing to spend a few sats on some content.
Yeah. So you had a tweet today, I think it was today, that you were encouraging all the Bitcoiners to use Bitcoin as payment rails. Don't just look at it as digital gold and save it and watch number go up. Um, y- how do you encourage, so do people really need to change their thinking on it? Because I think that the challenge there is that Bitcoin tends to go up over time and people are reluctant to spend it, and
Yeah.
it makes sense to stack it and hold on to it as long as you can until you really need it. So what's the pitch there to get people to spend something that they know is going to go up over time?
So that was not my message.
Oh,
But on that, and I'll come back to that in a
okay.
second. But I actually, the way that we build at Lightspark
Yeah.
is to build Bitcoin as an invisible real-time settlement network
Okay.
for money. So you don't even know
So
you're
you're
using
saying
it.
use the network, don't necessarily
Yeah,
spend Bitcoin.
and
Got
but
it.
my message this morning was different, which
Uh,
is a message to Bitcoiners in general, which is, the minute anything gets traction on Bitcoin,
yeah.
everyone is freaking out. it's going to create centralization. It's really bad.
Oh, I
We need
see.
an alternative,
Got it.
etc. And like, and by the way, when we say taking off on Bitcoin, like, a normal payment network at the scale they operate at, it's not even a blip.
Yeah,
It's nothing. And so we get wrapped up around, like, at all, fighting centralization at all cost when anything actually takes off. And I think it's detrimental to making Bitcoin everyday money if everyone's fighting or trying to take away from
yeah,
some other network that is being built
yeah,
because they think it's going to create some micro centralization at the scale of payments. And I think that's the thing we
yeah.
do as Bitcoiners.
It's
And
it's the
my
nature of the
call,
beast.
yeah, but my call is like, look, right now we have core chains being built left and right
Yeah,
that are going to be super optimized for payments.
yeah,
And if we keep on fighting, then for the absolute purity of Bitcoin L1 and nothing else should exist, then
yeah.
we'll never win.
Yeah, I think we sometimes get something similar to that on the security tokenization side, right? So tokenized securities, I think there just necessarily has to be a pretty significant degree of centralization. We have a regulator. We need to have a regulator. We need
Yeah,
to know who shareholders are. We have to pay dividends out. We can't
sure.
we can't pay dividends to people in North Korea,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you have to accept some degree of centralization with some of these technologies. And again, the same with us as we try and build as much as possible
Hmm.
on Bitcoin with layer twos like the Liquid network and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Is there anything in the Lightning space that can be applicable to the tokenized security space? Is there any way to do tokenized offerings through Liquid or on Lightning, I mean, or anything like that that you've seen?
So on Spark, you can tokenize assets very easily. And we
Okay.
think it's actually better because you don't have to configure channels and nodes in a certain way to actually support specific tokens
Yeah.
or tokenized assets. And we're seeing it like take off like crazy with, like, at first the lowest common denominator, the easiest thing to do, which is meme coins. And I'm
Good
not a
Lord.
meme coin guy,
You're not.
but it's fascinating to watch, like, all of these launch pads and
Yeah.
marketplaces for meme coins being developed, AMMs, and it's taking off vertically, and that's because it's so easy to launch tokens. There's the BTKN standard, which is Bitcoin token open source standard
Okay.
that we're using on top of Spark as a protocol to issue any tokenized asset, and it's so trivial to issue tokens and have an opportunity to unilaterally exit to L1. So you have trustlessness uh, included in the protocol, that we're seeing massive adoption right now.
Oh, that's interesting. So for securities, a key functionality that we need is the whitelisting. We need to make sure that the tokens, for us, don't specifically go out to U.S. investors
Hmm.
or Iranian or North Korean,
Hmm.
all the big no-no jurisdictions for us. So does that functionality exist? Can you put whitelists or restrict the transactions in any way to make sure that we kind of tick those boxes as well?
So not right now, but that definitely can be built. But right
Really?
now, the network is open,
Yeah,
and it's a permissionless network.
yeah.
That being said, you could add conditions for specific applications that would enable you to do that.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really exciting. I have to ask you a couple questions about Libra. I've wanted to know this
Of
for a long
course.
time. Obviously Libra, when you launched, it was a very ambitious project. What were your thoughts and the thoughts of the firm initially when you were putting that project together? And did you expect the amount? I'm sure you expected some pushback. Did you expect the amount of pushback that you got from, I think particularly at the time was central banks, the Congress, policymakers, and then probably I'm not sure if there was this much directly, but I'm sure there was a lot behind doors from the Wall Street
Of
incumbents.
course.
So
Yes. So I mean, look, the reason I wanted to build Libra
yeah.
was really that I was so incredibly frustrated with the lack of progress when it came to global money movement. Right?
Mm,
It's like, I said this on stage a second ago here. Like the previous, Paolo was on stage, and the talk was about brain machine interface and how someone is now driving a car with their brains without, like, using their limbs. And this is 2025. We have AI everywhere, and
yeah.
we're still dependent on networks that were built in the 70s that move money in 3 to 5 days, are closed Friday
Sure.
after 5 p.m. and cost $50 to move money. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous in 2018
Yeah.
when we started working on Libra, and it's still ridiculous now. And so we got started on that premise that we needed to create an open source and open standard to move money on the internet 24/7 in real time. And I originally actually wanted to do it outside of Meta, outside of Facebook, but Mark really insisted in having it inside. And so I expected a lot of pushback because at the time Facebook was really not a popular company. It's
Yeah.
much better now, but at the
Yeah.
time it
Yeah.
just
That was it. That was a
wasn't a
tough
good
time.
time. And someone said yesterday to me, of course, like the minute you announced it,
Yeah.
not when it became massive, it was already systemic for all of these central bankers and regulators and
Of
everyone
course, because if I
else.
remember correctly, at the time the idea was to create like an equally weighted currency basket. I think of USD, EUR, maybe
Very naive,
JPY. I
yes.
forget.
It was very naive of us to to believe that we're actually, by bringing the euro in a smaller way than the dollar, of
Sure.
course, etc., that like we were actually going to make everyone happy. Reality is we pissed off everyone, and
Yeah.
and this is the first time that all of the central bankers of the world like united and agreed on something. And then it was basically 3 more years
Because
of
it was
pain.
in some ways it could be seen. I think at the time there was a lot of concern about the power that people were just starting to understand, that the power that the big technology companies had started to amass. And for a little bit of context, I think that was after the Trump's first win. The Democrats blamed Facebook for putting Trump in power. I think
Everyone blamed Facebook for everything.
that's right.
Yes.
That's right. So
Which turned out to be completely false, by the way.
of course, yeah, of course,
But no
no,
one says that now. It's like the whole
no.
Cambridge Analytica was like a complete fluke,
Oh,
but like
that's right.
no one actually,
Yeah,
uh, no one says that now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you said it was naive. How did such a big company with so many smart people, like how did you guys think that would work? Because I kind of expected that
Mhm.
that's what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think life is too short to do small bets, right?
Yeah,
And so we wanted to make a big bet,
yeah,
and we wanted to do it right. And the job to be done was actually empower people to have sound
yeah,
money and to move money in real time at a very low cost at the rate of billions of people.
yeah,
And when it came to that, if you're looking at it from the lens of people
yeah,
and businesses and empowering them with free global money movement, this was the right approach.
yeah,
I think technologists are idealists, and
yeah.
certainly maybe I can take the blame for being naive, but I feel like at the time
It was a moonshot.
it was a moonshot, and at the time we knew it was like high beta,
Yeah,
and it was worth a swing. And in hindsight, now we've developed insights that it was not the right setup, anyways, right? Because if it can be killed, it's not the right setup, and that's why I'm
exactly
building
right.
on Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, a question on that. Do you think maybe you say it wasn't the right setup? Do you feel it was mostly not the right time? Like, what if you did it today? What if maybe if there
It'll
wasn't
fail again.
really?
Yeah, I think I said that we were systemic instantly. I think if you're not launching it from a company that has that type of fear factor, and you become systemic. Let's say that the network and stablecoin you're using
Yeah,
is now interoperating the in and out flows of Brazil or Mexico or Europe at the rate of 20 or 30%.
yeah,
Dead, dead.
yeah,
Because you can pick up the phone as a regulator, call the CEO of the network of the stablecoin issuer that's fully centralized,
yeah.
and tell them stop, and it's over. And so the reason we're building on Bitcoin, and I've decided to dedicate the rest of my life on building an open money network, an
Yeah,
open internet for money on top of Bitcoin, is because there's no one to call.
yeah,
And it's truly open, it's truly neutral, it's truly decentralized, and behaves like the internet.
yeah.
And all of these other things are corp chains, and that's
Sure.
what I call them. And
Uh,
so,
it's like Mr. Robot, eCoin. Is that what it's called? Remember that? Oh,
right,
it's great.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think that was a particularly challenging time because at the time everybody also hated Bitcoin, right? It was rat poison squared. All the
Yeah,
bankers still hated it a lot. I think. So the whole idea, I think, was difficult. But maybe what I mean now is that the Trump administration seems to be a lot more. Just it's a kind of a sea change, right? They're a lot more open to the whole idea of
mhm.
digital assets and stable coins, and it sounds
Until
like
there's
even.
one that becomes too dominant.
Oh, I thought that happened already.
Which one?
Well, I mean USDT, right? Isn't
No,
that
but I
dominant?
think I think like if you look at USDT is
Yeah,
definitely dominant
yeah,
outside of the US,
yeah,
right? And I think for consumer use cases this is happening.
yeah,
I think what the administration is trying to do now is encourage more issuers. So their view of the world is that there's going to be hundreds of stable coins around.
yeah,
Um, I personally think that the USDT focus on the people who need a dollar balance and a dollar account in countries where they can't have the real thing is so good that like it'll be hard to compete.
Yeah.
But for all kinds of institutional use cases, etc., it's fine. But if a company started to replace the dollar
Oh,
that
yeah.
US consumers were using for purchases and like replace it as a unit of account,
Yeah.
or if a US dollar stablecoin started replacing the euro, like the fear of that is being voiced very loudly by the ECB right now, right? It's
Sure.
like if a
Yeah.
US dollar stablecoin were to start becoming a unit of account at a rate mainstream in Europe, it would be shut down in
It,
Europe instantly.
yeah, it's entirely likely too, because we've seen that experiment play out in markets, right? You had, for the longest time, you had USDT, you had tokenized euro, you had tokenized gold. Even tokenized gold kind of languished below $1 billion for
Hmm.
years and years until gold had finally made some movement. All the gold bugs been waiting 50 years; they're very happy.
Hmm.
And the euro always kind of languished. It's just everything went into US dollars. It's just such an interesting experiment in open
Hmm.
market. So that's 100%, I think, what would happen.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like for me, first of all, I like to distinguish between assets and network.
Hmm.
For me, the network needs to be unassailable, open, behave like the internet.
Yep.
And there's literally nothing that is
Sure.
as fit for mission than Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
Like it's the most decentralized, open, neutral settlement
Yep.
network and asset, right? And if you're using small amounts of Bitcoin as TCP/IP packets for money between real-time payment systems, and you're not touching the domestic currencies of those countries, it's not threatening, right? It's like you're still sending US dollars from a US bank to a bank in Europe receiving
Got it.
euros, and you're just a neutral settlement network that happens to have the ability to interoperate these otherwise uninteroperable system in real time and low cost, right? I think if you do that, you're fine. You're not threatening. And then stable coins are useful for countries where your home currency is just not a good currency, and
Yeah.
you want a dollar account. And typically in those countries, it's harder for them to actually stop it, right? And
Yeah.
it's already happened. The you know the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? So this is how we're approaching it. The network is fully neutral. We're asset agnostic. You can move stable coins. You can move fiat. It interoperates and connects with the payment systems of 65 countries
Yeah.
now. Um, and that's the way.
Is that the end game though, or do you believe that the end game is hyper Bitcoinization and all the USD and various other currencies fall by the wayside, and then we're using the network to actually do Bitcoin payment transactions?
I don't know. I think it's hard to actually conceive stores in the middle of America or in the middle of Europe starting to denominate all of their goods and services in Bitcoin soon. I think in other economies it's likely to happen sooner.
Hmm.
So I don't think this is going to happen soon. I
Yeah.
think does it happen over a longer period? Maybe. It's kind of interesting. I agree with Jack Dorsey that like if Bitcoin doesn't become part of everyday payments, we failed.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the question is, what is the definition of being part of everyday payments? My definition is, at first stage, it's completely invisible settlement in the background. And I think they even took a step towards that with the Square terminal accepting Bitcoin transactions for merchants. But you can actually use a dollar balance on the consumer side or Bitcoin on the consumer side and settle in dollars on the merchant side. And you just happen to be using Lightning and it's a free transaction for the merchant. So this is a step towards like using Bitcoin as an invisible payment network with the currencies being fiat currencies at the edges of the network. And I think that's a really important step to be part of mainstream everyday transactions for people.
Got it. The last question on Libra, I promise. When you guys were looking at the structure of it, did you do much research, or I mean, you must have done a ton of research into Bitcoin at the time, and what was the thinking on developing your own coin rather than trying to build something
Yeah.
around Bitcoin? Was it just easier to monetize, or
No, it was really not that. I mean, I've been into Bitcoin since 2011.
yeah? Wow, that's
The
amazing.
first step that I took when I started the journey was trying to figure out if we could build this on top of Bitcoin. We spent a long time really looking at Lightning and trying to figure out whether it would stretch to billions of daily users on
Hmm.
top of WhatsApp and all of that, and it just wouldn't have. And so it was too early. It didn't have the scalability. It didn't have the capabilities needed for billions of wallets. Um, and also, I didn't really make that leap that Jack Mallers made the first, was the first one to do with Strike, which is of using fiat currencies and then converting in and out of Bitcoin just in time to settle with another fiat currency on the other side. But regardless, it just was technically not realistic for us to build on Bitcoin, and we wanted to solve the problem, and we went and built a proprietary thing, which in hindsight was a mistake.
What do you think? So on the payment side for Bitcoin, we still need to see some changes on the tax side, probably in the U.S. for it to really take
Yes.
off, and maybe on the regulatory side as well. So my understanding in the U.S. is that every time you use Bitcoin to buy coffee, it's a taxable event. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we need to fix that, and I think there's legislation that is put forward now to just address that. And Senator Loomis notably has a good proposal for this. So I think it'll get solved. I'm not too worried about it right now because we're just using Bitcoin as a
The
settlement
rails,
asset
yeah,
in the back end that's invisible, and so for people, they don't have to worry about it.
yeah,
But yeah, it's something that we should tackle.
yeah. You've had a couple of mentions, I think, of gold as well, and like a target price around Bitcoin. Gold has had a massive year this year.
Mhm.
Do you think that starts to mean revert a little bit? We see some of the animal spirits come out of gold and switch over into the Bitcoin side.
I mean, look, I think Bitcoin is so much better than gold. It's in all the possible ways that you can think of, right? It's like it's digital, it's more fungible,
Yeah.
and like
What about tokenized gold?
I mean, tokenized gold is still gold at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and so I just think that Bitcoin, like when the first gold ETFs were launched, the gold companies figured out a way to mine more gold.
Yeah.
There's just no way you can do that with Bitcoin. And so, like, Bitcoin is truly the only true at scale deflationary asset you can own, and as such is better than gold. And you can use it for more things than gold. I know jewelry is nice, but like no, but like you're laughing, but like when you hear people say that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value and gold has,
Yeah.
they go back to, oh, but you can use it as jewelry. Great. What are you going to do if you need to buy food? Just like
Yeah.
melt all of your gold and
Yeah.
just make coins with it. Like and at what scale? And if you need to transmit it, what are you going to do? Put it in a truck? Like it makes no sense. Bitcoin is a much better store value and deflationary assets than gold will ever be. And I think it's just a matter of time for people to understand that, and at which point the market cap of Bitcoin will exceed that of gold.
What do you think? How long do you think it's going to take for people to kind of bridge that gap?
I'm really bad at timing.
Trying to get a
I'm
I'm trying to get a price
always
prediction here.
like I'm not always, but I'm generally directionally right.
Yeah.
But when it comes to timing, I'm generally wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not open ended. I just don't try to predict timelines
Yeah.
for stuff. I try to be just directionally right for.
Yeah. I think you probably are. What do we need to do on the adoption side? So you're doing a lot of work on payments. It seems like there's just an insane amount of institutional interest at the moment right now. A lot of that, I guess, is because of the final approval of the Bitcoin ETFs, just a massive success. The institutionals are sniffing around stable coins. They're talking about tokenized securities, although I'm a little bit, suspect of their motivations there and how that's going to play out. But what needs to happen on the adoption side for kind of us to continue the growth trend?
For Bitcoin
Yeah,
specifically.
yeah,
Well, look, I think first of all, we needed to make Bitcoin more part of everyday life. And I think you asked me the question about Bitcoin rewards earlier.
yeah,
I think that's a massive use case, right?
sure.
It's like, if you can start earning very tiny amounts of Bitcoin in a self-custody wallet that's super user friendly
Yeah.
every time you do something or every time you use a credit card, then you're going to start caring.
It's just way cleaner because you get these loyalty points. You have to go through a process to
No
redeem
one
them or
wants
use
any of
them.
these
It's just a
things.
pain in the ass, and probably people
Yeah.
don't even use them mostly, I would think.
No,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, if like, by the way, great startup idea. If someone has an ability to like do a deal with like any of these point brokers and enable
sure.
you to actually just
Swap
convert
them
all of
into,
your points
yeah,
into Bitcoin in real time at a low cost, like it'll be very successful very quickly.
yeah.
And you can use Spark to do that. So, um, but yeah, I think look, the interesting thing is, for instance, now we're working with the Tether team on WDK. So Spark is part of the WDK wallet. It's like, the wallet development kit that is going to go live with Rumble as a first step, and many other steps after
Oh,
that.
that's great.
And I think this is a good example of how you actually push adoption of Bitcoin. Is I actually think that for many people the equivalent of a thin, no lending at first at least, but a thin bank account is actually a wallet where you have your checking account holding Tether
Yeah,
or US dollar stablecoin,
yeah,
and your savings being Bitcoin.
sure.
And it's super user friendly, and you can use it for everyday transaction.
Yeah.
You can use it for global payments. You can use it for all of these things. And then suddenly, next thing you know is you have hundreds of millions of people, then billions of people holding Bitcoin, even if it's small amounts, in wallets that are readily accessible on a real-time payment network. And I think that is going to change things in a profound way. That's why we're super thrilled to partner with Tether on this.
Is there anything that worries you over the next couple of years?
So many things, and we don't have enough time. But no, it's so many things. But I think that the nice thing about building on Bitcoin is that it's the thing that humans can mess around with the least.
Yeah.
It's the most human resistant network, and I'm always more worried about humans versus code.
Uh,
And so I'm happy I'm building on Bitcoin.
yeah. Yeah. I think Bitcoin is one of, it's an optimistic asset, I think, at its core. It's a reason for optimism for the future.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's switch that question around to something slightly more positive. What are you most excited about for the next couple of years?
Well, definitely what we're working on, and that's what really gets me excited every single day. And I think just changing how money moves around the world for billions of people and millions of
Yeah.
businesses, maybe lifting global GDP by a couple of points in the process, which would be
Just
huge,
by the
right?
efficiencies or,
Yeah, I mean, look at how many transactions are not happening today because we rely on networks that are older than we both are.
sure.
Like, it's insane, right? It's like if I wanted to send $5 to someone in Switzerland right now from my US bank account, like I couldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
So now I have to have cash. I have to have all kinds of different other ways to pay, but I can't pay. Like, so there's trillions of dollars a day,
Yeah.
trillions of dollars a day that are currently not being moved because of the limitations of the current payment rails. And I think that if we can build an efficient, open network on top of Bitcoin that enables all the money in the world to move in a seamless way for very cheap, we will lift the world's GDP by a couple of points, which means more money in the pockets of billions of people and millions of businesses. And that's, it's a very, very inspiring thing to work on.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a very optimistic note to wrap things up on.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the time, David. That's really interesting. I appreciate the time for
Thank
today's
you.
conversation. Great. Thanks.